In 1974, the House Judiciary Committee took a significant step by voting to recommend the impeachment of President Nixon. This decision was prompted by the Watergate scandal, which involved an attempt to conceal the burglary of the Democratic National Committee, DNC headquarters. When Nixon assumed the presidency, he inherited a powerful executive branch, and he further expanded its influence during his time in office. Nixon relied heavily on a small group of loyal advisers, including H.R. Haldeman, who served as chief of staff, John Ehrlichman, who was his chief domestic advisor, and John Mitchell, who held the position of Attorney General. These individuals played instrumental roles in Nixon's re-election campaign and shared his penchant for power and secrecy. Unfortunately, their loyalty and desire for control ultimately led them to engage in the cover-up of their involvement in the Watergate scandal. Nixon had a constant fear of losing elections, so his campaign team sought any advantage to ensure his re-election. They hired 5 individuals to break into the Democratic Party offices located in the Watergate complex in Washington, D.C. Their objective was to gather information by photographing files and placing wiretaps on phones. However, their operation was discovered when the group's leader, James McCord, a former CIA agent and official of the Committee to re-elect the President, CRP, was caught. John Mitchell, who had previously served as Attorney General, was the director of the CRP. Upon the revelation of McCord's connections, Nixon and his staff attempted to conceal any link to the White House. They destroyed evidence, and Nixon even requested the CIA to pressure the FBI into halting their investigation into the burglary. Initially, the Watergate burglary did not gain significant attention during the election. Only a couple of reporters persisted in investigating the story. Their articles eventually uncovered connections between members of the administration and the burglary. Despite the mounting evidence, the White House continued to deny any involvement. Nixon won re-election by a landslide against George S. McGovern. However, shortly after his victory, the cover-up surrounding the Watergate scandal began to unravel. In January 1973, the Watergate burglars faced trial, and the presiding judge, John Sirica, suspected they did not act alone. Then, in March 1973, James McCord sent a letter to Sirica confessing that he had lied under oath and hinted at involvement from Nixon's administration. Public interest in the burglary surged. In April 1973, Nixon dismissed White House counsel John Dean, and 3 top aides resigned. Nixon then appeared on television, denying any cover-up and announcing the appointment of Elliot Richardson to investigate Watergate. The Senate initiated its own investigation in May 1973. During the hearings, John Dean implicated Nixon in the cover-up, and later, aide Alexander Butterfield disclosed the existence of White House tape recordings. Despite demands from the Senate committee, Nixon refused to release the tapes. In October 1973, Special Prosecutor Archibald Cox took Nixon to court to obtain the tapes. Nixon defied the court order and instructed Richardson to fire Cox. Richardson refused and resigned, followed by the Deputy Attorney General's dismissal. Finally, Solicitor General Robert Bork fired Cox. However, Cox's successor, Leon Jaworski, continued to pursue the tapes. In March 1974, a grand jury indicted 7 of Nixon's aides on charges of obstruction of justice and perjury. Nixon released around 1,250 pages of edited transcripts from tape meetings, but withheld the unedited tapes, citing concerns about national security. However, the Supreme Court rejected this argument in July 1974 and ordered him to release the tapes, emphasizing that evidence of potential criminal activity could not be withheld, even by a president. Just 3 days later, a House committee voted to impeach Nixon, signaling a potential Senate trial and possible removal from office if found guilty. When the tapes were finally made public, They revealed Nixon's knowledge of the burglary and involvement in the cover-up. Faced with mounting evidence and the looming threat of impeachment, Nixon resigned from office on August 8, 1974, before formal impeachment proceedings could take place. The Watergate scandal, combined with the ongoing Vietnam War, significantly eroded public trust and left many disillusioned with their government officials.